Anyhow, next topic. Gore. Cheesy prosthetics. Is this the 80s that I smell? With The Substance, and now finally Together, I feel we're finally, we're not in the first stages of a possible, body horror renaissance in film. I would love it, but I'd have to see, more than a couple body horror movies a year to really say that. I mean, off the top of my head, we're getting, the Clayface movie, somewhere down the line by DC Studios. So we'll see where that goes. And The Substance was my second favorite movie of the year that it came out, right under Dune 2, of course. The Substance, I thought, was a sensational film. Incredibly campy, incredibly fun, and just fucking relentless with the energy pacing. It's a movie that knows how to fuck the shit out of you in the best way possible. It knows what buttons to hit and knows what editing techniques to really keep you engaged. It's a movie that knows how to fuck you. And I love that movie for it. So I was really excited because I am a huge Alison Brie fan. I love Glow. She's obviously a huge part of my favorite sitcom of all time. She's, Annie Edison on Community. I think that's her last name, Edison. Benson. I don't know why I want to say Annie Benson, but Annie Edison from Community. I loved her on Glow. Obviously, I loved her as Diane from BoJack Horseman. So, I also loved her in Jesus fucking Christ. It was a raunchy comedy about nuns with Aubrey Plaza. I can't remember, but I'm a big fan of her. So I was really excited to finally see her in a horror movie because I can't really remember Alison Brie in a horror movie until this point. And, the sheer premise of, Alison Brie and Dave Franco, real-life married couple, starring in a movie together as a married couple, I thought that was interesting. I've been a big fan of Dave Franco, too. I loved him in, those Seth Rogen stoner comedies. I loved him in 21 Jump Street. I've never actually gotten to see him, in a major role, at least from the films that I've seen with him. So I was pretty excited. And it's the first-time director, too, so I was like, oh. And I didn't know much about the movie, but I got a pretty good understanding of what it was probably going to be, thanks to the trailers. I've seen a lot of shit. I've seen a lot of movies, TV shows. And I feel like I'm pretty good at, predicting what's going to happen in a movie fairly early on. Because, okay, I'm getting into it. What did I think of Together? I really liked it. Has its problems, has some stuff that I wish they tinkered with a little bit to enhance the overall experience, but overall, I thought Together was an incredibly fun roller coaster of gore, romance, horror, and tension. I did not expect to really like that movie as much as I did. Let's talk about the performances. Jesus Christ, Dave Franco can fucking act. Oh my God, I became a Dave Franco stan after this movie. I loved him in that movie. He was fantastic. I can't, the physical, it's a very physical performance that demands a lot of, facial, facial acting. A lot of, he's very committed to the role that he, signed up for. Alison Brie was as wonderful as ever. I really, really liked her. Not as a flashier performance as, Dave, but for what the performance, needed out of Alison Brie, I thought she knocked it out of the park. And also, people have been talking about this in their reviews as well, how the romance and chemistry between their two characters in the movie, in universe, is pretty much, amplified by the fact that Alison Brie and Dave Franco are married in real life. There are various sequences that I really liked in the movie, and even instances that really sold me on their romance as an actual couple in the film. It wasn't, I guess the comfortability of, the intimacy of certain sequences. There is a sex scene in the film, and you can even tell, they're pretty, of course, you're probably used to it, But they're bringing something to the material by the fact that you can tell that there's this organic rapport with one another. There are a couple of instances in the film where they're interacting with other people, where they're, kind of jabbing at each other and, bringing up shit from the past in a fun, loving way that feels really, I've been with couples, I've been in front of couples and, they would, refer to themselves, talk shit about each other, in a fun, loving way in front of the other person. The other person would like take it and like, yeah, screw you. And yeah, hey, remember this? Oh, remember the time when you did this? Ah, you little goof. I haven't really seen that kind of stuff in film or television to really, sell you on the chemistry of a character. Usually, they're building up to, their eventual kiss, their eventual sex scene, and so on and so forth. They're showing you their interests, maybe their common interests, and so on. This movie, they hit the ground running, and you can feel every inch of chemistry, relatability. They feel like an actual realistic, millennial couple, You buy it. You completely buy it. And furthermore, the fact that you actually give a shit about these guys, you feel much more horrified when they're in this incredibly perplexing scenario. I don't want to spoil to you what Together is really about or what's really going on when you actually watch the movie. I'd rather you watch that movie for yourself. But unfortunately, and I'm not going to give spoilers like I said, but my biggest complaint with the Together movie was, first off, I want to praise the movie a little bit more before I start talking about something that I really didn't like. The horror. There are some sequences in this movie that I found to be quite frightening. Some interesting visuals, some interesting, physical performances, or the way a body can twitch, or the way, a body is shaped and composed in the shot can elicit a reaction of like, what the fuck is that? Unlike The Substance, Together is actually kind of scary. I actually am comfortable I'm actually comfortable calling this movie, a horror movie, Because The Substance, there's nothing in that movie that's really scary, to be honest, except the fact that it's, technically body horror is a subgenre in horror, but it's kind of like, it's not really scary. There's no tension in the film at all. It's just a roller coaster. There is quite a bit of tension in Together, which I appreciated. And also, it helps the fact that you actually give a shit about the characters on screen. On top of that, the prosthetics, the ideas, and the concepts in Together, I thought were really, really cool. This feels like the ideal dream first project directorial debut. There are sequences in this film, particularly there's a sequence involving a drop of blood on a table and a sequence with Dave Franco showering that are perfect to be able to execute high concept ideas in a low budget way. I can imagine, aspiring filmmakers are going to watch this movie and be like, that's a really cool idea. Man, I wish I would have thought of that. Man, this film is a concept that is, drenched and salivating with, incredible potential to escalate in a small scale, but still interesting and, fantastical enough to warrant a feature film about it. You know what I mean? There are some incredibly genius, filmmaking techniques that, as especially me as a person, who, I would love to make a movie one day, but who knows if it'll be possible. But I like to notice that kind of things of like, oh my God, this director's he really thought this concept out. He really thought about all the potential hypothetical scenarios you could execute this idea in an interesting way without, the budget's blooming to like over $100 million. And it's incredible. It's really impressive and incredibly charming when you start noticing it from that lens of like, man, they really didn't need that much money to execute this really cool idea. And I loved it. Really, really powerful. The characters are interesting enough to where you care about them, and you want them to survive this pretty life-imperating scenario that they're in. However, there's a character introduced somewhat in the beginning, but really, has a major role in the halfway point, to where I found his involvement in the story to be pretty obvious, or at least not obvious in the way where, like, I know what his character is supposed to be and why he's here to explain, gobbledygook about, the mythology of this world. But you can tell his role is later revealed to be something else, and that's something else, it's something that you can see coming from a mile away. The moment you see him, you're like, oh, I'm sure this guy's, it's the entirety of the movie is just Alison Brie and Dave Franco. So if there's another character there, obviously they're going to be important in some way. So, and it's mostly important in the same ways that you probably think he's going to be while you're watching the movie. So that was a little disappointing. I wish it was written in I wish there was like more characters, at least, spread out, the blank, so there could be a bunch of red herrings instead of just one dude that would stand out, because you're always, looking at him being like, this guy's going to be important later down the line. I know it because he's here. You know what I mean? And also, I really fucking hated the opening sequence. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'll say this. The opening scene in Together, if they would have cut that shit out, the movie would be a million times better, because the opening sequence inadvertently gives away the entire plot of the film. That's just my opinion. I'd give Together, a very solid 8 out of 10. I had a great time watching this movie.